I probably defined it a lot of different ways along the way. So, because I came from a background where up to the age of 30, I was an enormously destructive force in the lives of lots of people around me, um, through my drug addiction and alcoholism and, the ways that I, responded to the world I inhabited. So, I think, I kind of started off thinking, my idea of success in 1985 was like if I could get like one day when I didn't want to die, I would have called that success. And later, I got more ambitious. Oh, that was a big one, and I do remember the first day that I didn't want to die, and it was a good day. It was a really good day. Um, Later, I started, going to school, and I started to, and I liked it, and I was good at it, and I'd not really been in school since I was 16. I was 30 years old, and so, it was kind of defined by academic success, and I worked really, really, really hard at it, and I liked it, and getting great grades and understanding stuff, and being the first hand to go up in the room. Um, and some of that I think was very healthy, and some of it was probably me trying to look like somebody who deserved to be here, being afraid that I didn't really belong. Um, Then I thought maybe I'd be like a super duper rock star researcher or something like that when I got in graduate school. And I tried to get a job at one of the real rock star kind of research centers, but I was so afraid I didn't deserve to be there that I made myself unhireable at the first like 5 places I interviewed. I just did miserably. And but finally, I got laid low, like I figured out, what was going wrong in these interviews, and I was kind of trying to puff myself up to look big enough for the job, and what that looked like was arrogant and self-serving and self-centered, and late in the day, I got a job interview at the University of Mississippi, which is kind of a medium-sized, it's a nice, solid state university, but it's not like Brown or Duke or something like that. And I went there, and I in my sort of first interview, this person said, "Well, you should be really easy to place," and I said, "Yeah, except for this little personality disorder problem." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I told them, like, of all the people I knew, who I went to school with, like, I wanted to be a college professor. I mean, I really wanted to be a college professor. And I was afraid that I wouldn't get to do that, and I tried to look like somebody who could, and it backfired and just has made me look horrible. But I just want a chance to be a college professor. And, I told that story to a couple of different people. And I went home, and the next day they called me up and they said, "Would you like to come home and be a college professor?" So, and and it's been, like what success means to me has been shaped, over my years there. I would say, like what I'm most proud of. It's a kind of a social network that I've been able to cultivate that is, connected to education, and a lot of it is students at the university, and I've made a place at the university for students to like kind of grow and develop and to learn to carry others on the days they need to be carried, and the harder thing for them to learn to be carried on the days that they need to be carried. So to carry and be carried. I couldn't have predefined success in that way because I would have had no idea that such a thing was possible. So it's not like in '85 I would like to, because it'd be like imagining a different planet or something. My wildest drunken dreams have consistently paled next to reality. I'm drawn to a lot of the conventional markers of success. Like I'm embarrassingly susceptible to flattery. I'm almost 60 years old, and you cannot know how weak I am for flattery. So, I like it when people admire me and stuff like that. And I try to not have that run how I live. I don't mind money, which is another one of those kind of conventional ones, and I try not to let that be what organizes my activity. I definitely don't think it has to do with stuff. We really live in a kind of modest place. Like if somebody gave me a couple $1,000,000, I wouldn't move out of my house. I like my back garden that my wife has worked so lovingly to make, and I'm pretty content with the life I have. Definitely, I don't buy the kind of acquisitionist success. It doesn't mean much to me. It's kind of funny. How I handle fear and self-doubt is I've kind of made a career of some people learn to play, everybody really learns to play out of their kind of strong game, like they have their strong days and they have their days when they're on, and those days they get to play. But most people never learn to play out of their weaknesses. And so what it means is on their weekdays they either have to stay home or lie. They just have to go out in the world and pretend like somebody who's not weak. Or just stay away from people so that they don't detect it. And somehow or other, I had the good fortune to be connected with some people that were very open about their own weaknesses, and I recognized that I wasn't alone, and it meant really a lot to me. And so I kind of started giving that away. How scared I was. That I wasn't fit for the world, and that I couldn't be much use in the world. I walked around the first 30 years of my life thinking the world would be better off if I was, gone. And so when I heard these people who were, who had things going on in their lives, speaking about their own weakness, their own sadness, their own fears, I knew that I was not alone. And at first, these people were nice to me, and at first, I, kind of thought, there were there was going to be some payment expected in some way, which I couldn't figure out because I didn't really have anything to pay. But I don't know why people would be so generous. Now I know what they wanted. Is that they wanted me to give away the same thing that they gave me, and but it happened pretty naturally. They offered me their weakness, and I knew that I wasn't alone, and I started offering that to other people, and I could see people responding to it. People get so tired having to be strong and smart all that all the time. It's the hardest thing for graduate students. I tell them when they come there. Independence in my work lab group is like punished, you know. If you want to work independently, go work with someone else. My lab is about interdependence, you know, and learning to carry and be carried. Like it's everybody's job in the lab, you know, to learn to carry and be carried. And it's much harder for these super bright, because to get into a PhD program in clinical psychology, you got to be really, really smart, really, really hardworking. So they're really good at carrying. They're really bad, very often, really bad at being carried. And that's a hard thing for them to learn to like put themselves in the hands of others. You have to give your weakness away. You have to bring your weakness to the table, and in order for that to happen. And this comes back to me again and again and again. In 2006, when I was the president of ACBS, I was the first president once we were incorporated. And Steve Hayes and Steve's my mentor, and you know, I love Steve without reservation. And I know who he is. Like, this isn't like some kind of idealized Steve. Like, I've spent a lot of time with Steve. And so anyway, he and I had talks, and there was like going to be my talk and then his talk. And then they got switched, and I thought, you know, woohoo, I get an extra day, you know, to work on my talk. And Steve gives this talk, and it is so brilliant. It brings me to tears, you know, like it has such heart and smart poured in equal measure that I'm like brought to tears, you know. And at first I'm thinking, wow, you know, I've been working with this guy for like 20 years, and he can like bring me to tears with a talk, you know, a science talk. And then the very next thing I thought was, how am I going to follow that? You know, and I sat in my hotel room at in London, you know, like I'm up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, you know, writing and rewriting and throwing out slides, and like, oh my God, you know, how can I, you know, like, and I had this little book, and it's one that I love really a lot. It's called The Spirituality of Imperfection, which is just Bernie Kurtz wrote this little book. It's so nice. And there's a story in it that comes from the Judaic tradition, and it's to this rabbi who I can't think of his name, but the gist of it was, when you meet God, he will not ask why you were not Steve Hayes. He will not ask why you were not Moses. He will ask, you know, why you were not you. And so I'm sitting in this kind of hotel room in the middle of the night, fussing over this presidential address, and like, you know, I had to recognize that the reason I was the president of ACBS was not because, you know, they had confused me with Steve Hayes, you know, and they weren't asking me to be that, and that wasn't my place there. And so the next, you know, I started my talk by saying that, you know, the first presidential address was called The Heart of ACBS, and you know, what I did in that talk was to acknowledge, you know, like that what I had done at ACBS is to bring them my weakness, and they let me stay. And that, you know, has, I mean, I can see the effect of that. You know, I can see the effect on people. Not everyone. Some people are just like, holy crap, you know, and they run the other direction. But that's fine. I don't have to be for everyone. But boy, I've seen enough people who, man, I can see the weariness in their eyes, and they see a place where they can come to rest, where they don't have to be strong and smart. Good. I cry easily, but that's certainly, you know, one that, you know, because, I mean, you know, one thing is just all the damage, you know, that I did to myself, but, you know, I hurt a lot of people. You know, I mean, I'm past reprimands. I mean, I wouldn't go back and shake my finger at myself or anything like that. I mean, you know, I left my mother. I let my mother go months without knowing whether I was dead or alive. Not a phone call, not a way to contact me. I bought into a story that I was so toxic and dangerous that anybody who was close to me would be better off if they were like away from me. And I held on to that story and allowed my oldest daughter Chelsea to go without father for, you know, basically for like the first 10 years of her life. You know, if there was a way that I could reach back and tell my younger self, like, you know, you don't have to live like that. You know, you don't have to do it. See, I thought I had to. I mean, you know, like birdie's got to fly, fishy's got to swim, Kelly's a dope fiend. You know, it's sad, it's tragic, but it is what it is. And you know, if I could, you know, whisper back in time and say, you know, you don't have to do this. You can stop. You can stop. There's a way. There's a way back. Because I don't think I was ever like, I mean, I behaved mean, but it wasn't like in my bones. I didn't want to hurt anybody. But boy, I sure did. I hope. I mean, some like, you know, there's no going back. I don't know where they are. You know, there's no going back and fixing it. You know, it's my hope that, you know, people like my oldest daughter, like that, you know, that how I live now, sort of says, I mean, I don't want to say it comments, nothing goes back and sort of changes what happened, but I hope that what I'm doing in my life now serves as a kind of I don't know how to describe it, because I don't mean like to compensate, because to compensate sort of means that you sort of put things whole or something like that. And I don't, you know, I mean, there's no going back and like, you know, thank God my oldest daughter had a wonderful and loving stepfather, you know, who loved her when I was, you know, actively loved her when I was incapable of doing that. But I hope that it means something to like my mom and to my dad and, you know, to my daughter, that, you know, I'm trying to have my life be, you know, provide some service in the world, you know, to make some difference. Maybe somebody else stops a little sooner, you know, and sees like, you don't have to do that. You can stop. I hope that means something to them. So I just realized like all the questions that like you asked me, you know, are all these kind of really sad topics, and I wouldn't want people thinking I was like walking around like, you know, sad all the time or anything like that. I love my life. I mean, deeply. I have a wonderful, extraordinary life. I spent, you know, today on a panel discussion with, you know, somebody who's like, you know, at the leading edge of, you know, contemporary evolutionary theory, and I have wonderful students and a wife and 3 children who love me. And people like should know that I'm not just like kind of morose all the time, like I'm a complete goofball. So just so that you get an example, the other day I sent my daughter Sarah a text message, and I said to her, I said, sometimes I like to crouch down and clasp my arms together and tuck my head. And she sent me a message back saying, Dad, I don't know what to do with this information. And I texted her back, because that's how I roll. I'm sorry. These things just come out of my mouth, you know. You know what? Do you know why people don't eat clowns? Because they taste funny. Funny. So here, this duck walks into a bar. He says, hey, you got a grape? The bartender says, no, it's a bar. Duck leaves. Next day, duck walks into the bar. Hey, you got a grape? Bartender says, no, we don't have any grapes. It's a bar. It's your liquor, beer. Duck leaves. Next day, duck walks in. You got a grape? Bartender says, I'm getting sick of this. You know, if you come in here and ask me for a grape again, I'm going to pound a nail through your bill into the bar. Duck leaves. Next day, duck comes in. Got a hammer? No. Got a grape? That's how I roll. My kids will be so happy with me.